Gauteng Education Department says over 100,000 pupils have left the system for various reasons. Contributing factors include or could include teenage pregnancy, poverty, and a lack of scholar transport. For more on this, we're joined this morning by Gauteng's Education MEC, Matome Chiloane, joins us via our video link this morning. MEC, it's great to see you. Thanks very much indeed for coming on. What an incredibly worrying story. 100,000 students, learners lost to the system. And if an issue like scholar transport is to blame, it's even more heartbreaking.
Good morning, Michelle. Good morning to your viewers. Yes, we agree that the system lost that number, but we can't say they've been absolutely lost to the education system entirely. And scholar transport is not one of the issues that we mentioned when we responded to the question. What we responded to, because scholar transport we provide to learners for free, so as other social interventions such as the school nutrition and also academic interventions such as the secondary school intervention program. And also furthermore, we have no fee paying school quintile 1 to 3. So which in our system we're talking about 1,400 schools. Over 1,400 schools that are no fee paying school in our system in the province. So scholar transport is not one of them.
I see. So this was actually what was said by the Democratic Alliance. It was sort of listing a whole range of explanations for this 100,000 loss of learners, and scholar transport was one of the reasons. Shall we take a step back then, MEC? Can you outline for us as a department, when you look at the numbers of the learners that enter the system and make it all the way to grade 12, how do you account for that loss?
We identified, in fact, let me start. Our throughput has always been above 76, 77%. Now, we are looking at we're doing a latest test for grade 1 to grade 9, which is compulsory education, 7 to 15 years. We're sitting at a retention of above 88% that are present. However, coming to your question, there are multiple factors that lead to a child leaving the Gauteng education system. And those that should have been listed correctly are, for instance, when they get to grade 10, they have an opportunity to go to TVET colleges, which some take as an option. Also, there are also those that move to private schooling education. There are those that leave the province, go to and study in other provinces. There's also an option of homeschooling. And as you know, our province is as a center. Most of parents come to Gauteng when they plan to migrate to internationally, so it's easier to get your visas and other things to migrate. So we do have that number. So it's multiple factors.
It obviously is.
Safe to say that there are social pressures that we know that they exist, because what we did a few years ago, we did a study, and in real terms, from the overall number, obviously we would have to do a recent stat. We had about 4 to 6% real-term dropout, and which is significant, very low number compared to the 100,000 that we responded. We responded to say these are the learners that have left our system. That's when we're responding to the Democratic Alliance.
Yeah, part of what the DA was also saying is that what we need is a system where we can actually track these pupils, right? Is there such a system in place now where we can go to a community and say, and ask questions about why learner A, B, and C is not in school?
Yes, we do have a system. In fact, the only department that can give you a real number if a learner is lost to a system is the DBE nationally, because they get to trace learners from all provinces. I can only account for learners within our own system. And by law, the Schools Act requires a school to inquire if a learner has been missing from a school for a number of days. I think at the minimum of 4 or a maximum of 4 days. When the learner is missing for 4 days, the school has to go and find out why is this learner not in school. And if there is a possibility of a learner being prohibited from going to school by a parent or a guardian or whoever, by law, the law empowers that guardian or parents or that person responsible should be punished or charged or arrested for prohibiting a learner. So we do that. And we do ensure that our districts are always on par as to with learner attendance. That's why we seek learner attendance report. And so far, our learner attendance report, for example, this year was sitting at about 95 to 97% throughout all our schools in terms of learner attendance. So we do have that tracking system, and but nationally there's also a tracking system. So we do track.
Yeah. So obviously it takes a multi-pronged approach. It's not just the Department of Basic Education. It's also the district level, the schools themselves who need to go back to communities and track down those learners if they've as you say, been absent from school for a number of days. It's also the job of the Department of Social Development, surely. How closely does the Department of Basic Education work with other government departments to try and lower this number, which at any number is still high? Any child that's not going to school, right, that's sitting at home not getting education, we need to find out why that is.
No, we work very closely with our sister department, social development, community safety, as well as health, because we need all of them we need to work together as departments to ensure that we comprehensively incubate a child. So for services where we find that maybe the background at home, there are challenges, the social development comes in to intervene. And if the situation requires law enforcement, we have community safety on standby to ensure that it comes in. And also the aspect of health, we do bring health on board for other services that, for example, immunizations, etc. So we do work very closely with all those departments to ensure that the child is really in the best position as possible. And furthermore, what we are doing as well in Gauteng now, we have intensified, we've increased our what we call learner profiling, where we get to understand each and every learner and get a report. So what we are doing now, what we are going to be ensuring that there is a social worker that talks to every single learner in our province, so that we get to understand if there is a possible change in attitude, possible change in the back at home, then the learner is able to talk, so that we can then be able to be quicker, as opposed to reacting if there's a problem, so that we know that there is a problem here. Let's go and intervene. Let's get all these departments on board. Let's go and see how we can ensure that we assist our learner. So
you've told us about the throughput rate for the Department of Basic Education. Of course, this number, the number of learners who sort of went missing from the system, for lack of a better term, it spiked during COVID-19. That number increased quite drastically during the COVID-19 years. We've now got an updated number for that throughput rate. So MEC, when it is discovered that the throughput rate is at this particular rate, can we account for how many learners are brought back into the system? So we know how many learners are lost to the system, right, at any given time. Can we account for how many are brought back?
That's why I said that we need to understand in real terms that what is the full number of, if a learner is saying it's lost, is that learner not in any of what I read earlier, in a different province or left the country or in a college or homeschooling, etc. So for us to be able to give you to say this is the number of learners that come back, maybe one aspect I didn't add, and I should have added, is when an overage learner. There are learners that are above age that we don't lose them in the system entirely. We lose them to the public ordinary schooling period, but they do come back in terms of private schooling in the evening, and those learners, we don't really register them. Or at least list them in the public ordinary schooling. So there is that factor. But in general, that in terms of providing, a support for every single person who has an interest in going back to school, we do have that in the system.
Not only every person that has an interest in going back to school, these kids need to be in school.
Yes. No, we agree with you. That's why that's why our system is growing very exponentially in Gauteng. We are currently we are sitting at 2.7 million, above 2.7 million, is 2,730,000 learners that we have in the current academic year in our system, and that it's a growth of 23,000. So our system is growing, so meaning that there are learners that are coming into our system from, if we can assume that some maybe perhaps were those that had maybe left the system are coming back, and those are also and those who are coming from other areas. So there's an increase. Our system is growing exponentially.
Gauteng Education MEC Matome and Chiloane, let me thank you for your time this morning. An incredibly important story that I think anyone operating in any community, particularly poorer communities around our country, will know that on any given day there will be a number of children who are not in school. It's an incredibly worrying story.